캐리력 대결인데 이게 마오카이가 궁 뺏기는 거 고려하면은 사실 못 뽑거든요. 람머스 서포터? 람머
Beryl inventing new ways to lose. T1 struggling right before World's qualification. Barely slipping through. All classics reimagined in today's best of 5. Let's start with the draft conversation because we made a video, of course, of T1 and their drafting. They managed to, of course, put a bigger focus on their mid lane pick, which is super good. Here they are banning Jarvan and Wukong to set up the Orianna over the Ryze first pick, because we mentioned the hierarchy of Azir over Orianna over Ryze in the last video. The enemy went for the Trundle and Corki, and these are the moments where you should consider, of course, slamming ADC if your name is, of course, Gumayusi. They went for the Ziggs combo, when in reality, you know, we mentioned the last time, Ziggs was a champion that T1 has lost against a lot. They lost against it against Genji, lost against it against How Alive, and also the last series. They tried to pick it on their own here. I don't think Ziggs is particularly good against Corki, and then they slammed the Poppy. In most cases, I would disagree with a Poppy lock-in here because you're not getting a lot of value into the Cassio, the Corki, and of course the Trundle as well. Renekton is also even arguable, but it was of course Poppy Keria, and this was the first Poppy game that Keria ever lost, so it was acceptable. The main adjustment that we focus on here is that finally we got an Embessa game for, of course, Doran. Didn't look the greatest, but we had a bigger prior on the OP mid laners of the patch, with the enemy banning Azir, Bard, and Orianna. After the likes of Azir, Orianna, and Ryze are out of the pool, I do think shifting your focus to jungle makes a lot of sense. Jarvan's very strong on the patch, and with Wukong out, it does make sense to slam Jarvan because it sets up your Civvy for success, because the enemy team can't have it. And here in these spots, I do think that you could consider picking Rumble for yourself here in the 2-3 because of the combo here. But maybe picking Alistar here is just a natural response because you expect the enemy to pick their support together with Lucian. Obviously, there's a lot of Lucian combos, but often when you go into full 5 and the enemy can target specific ones that match well with your composition, for example, picking a range support together with Rumble is a big no-no. You don't want to play like Rumble Nami in your composition and then have an AP pick on 5. That doesn't make a lot of sense with Xin Zhao jungle, so most often they are expecting the AD, of course, the melee support to be picked on 4. So they banned the Braum, which is a combo with the Lucian, and this is where DK kind of found themselves in an awkward spot where they pick Janna and then 5 pick Ahri, which isn't a champion that does so well on the patch. But I wanted to highlight the main thing here is that they managed to, of course, slam ADC early. Gumayusi might have a very specific champion pool, but I do think when he gets his champions in good spots, he looks very good at them. And I think in the previous series, as we mentioned before, T1 kept dropping 4-5, or if they didn't, they picked ADCs that maybe he doesn't want to play that often. You can see in these spots when he dropped 4-5, the enemy banned Sivir, they banned Corki themselves because they didn't have a good answer into it, and they picked Xayah into the Vi showing. They got counted by the Ziggs. But instead, what I suggested was to pick ADC a lot earlier, which they did, and of course Gumayusi had a good Civi game here, but obviously Oner to me was the big MVP in this one. T1 had a very nice cohesive draft here, and going 4-5 with mid lane is completely acceptable when the big 3 are out of the pool. You can add Annie and Galio to that pool, maybe you can pick Galio even here in such a game, but DK just chose to ignore it. In game number 3, I was extremely surprised that DK actually let the enemy team get Orianna, meaning Faker getting Orianna and Pantheon, which was kind of crazy. They slammed Kai'Sa, Nico, and picking Xayah into the Kai'Sa showing when the enemy has engaged comp does make a lot of sense. Picking the Lulu was a little bit wild to me. I thought they're going to just pick a melee support here because that's what they are lacking, a little bit of engage and bulk. And then at least if they pick Lulu, I expect the K'Sante to be picked on 5. This is of course a very dangerous comp because this is quite fragile and the enemy team has many points of engage. So a lot in terms of how you manage your early game is going to be very important. But still, focus on picking ADC early, focus on making sure that you pick the OP mid laner also early, which I think is super nice, and this is the recipe that T1 should follow. Finally, in this game, we have the Annie Prio and then the MF Leona in the 1-2-3. Once again, picking the strongest option ADC, Gumayusi, earlier in the draft, which I really like. The Morgana, very nice spot for Morgana here because it denies Annie her ganks and her setup, and it's good against Leona too. And if you have a carry jungler like the Nafiri, you can of course do super well. The Gangplank locking as a counter into the Jax is also super nice because Gangplank has a beautiful interaction with Morgana because you can of course choose W, her Q or her ult even, and then of course the GP ultimate is very frustrating for Jhin to deal with, and GP can lane quite decently into the Jax. Sylas here in this spot is more of a comfort lock-in because the pairing here together with Annie and Leona makes Mercs very satisfying. This is just a question of, Oner is performing in this BO5 and I'm going to slam it here because I have Morgana ultimate and I believe that I can carry. Finally, the enemy team had no options for support and I think that's part of the reason why they picked Sylas. Here DK really wanted to pick Maokai support because it was the final support with engage in their mind. Other things like a Mumu could be tricky, maybe you can go like Set, but here the boy picked Rammus. Rammus is a champion that has, been popularized by certain players in Korea as support, but it's a very win lane, win game type of thing, and then you just leverage the fact that your ROMs are very strong, but I don't think this is as viable in, of course, competitive play. Rammus is something that even offers a good ult for Sylas in my opinion, so avoiding giving the Maokai ult doesn't even make sense because you can just black shield it, and kite it and then maybe play around it. But nevertheless, the Rammus gets locked in and we'll get to that. In game number 1, we had a lot of back and forth. T1 had a very good early game, but DK actually clawed the way back into the game because they kept killing Doran on side and getting a lot of value and a lot of gold. The main thing I wanted to highlight in this game from T1 side is even in a situation where they have Ziggs, a lot of people think it's a standalone champion, but the reason Ziggs is strong in this draft is because he interacts very well with the opponents. Cassio, Renekton, Trandu can't do much against the Ziggs, but he needs to be in positions to poke and actually fight. But T1 is so coded around making sure that Gumayusi plays in isolation and kind of hope that he can fend for himself unless they play range supers that have very strong pairings. Gumayusi finds himself in very desperate situations. And I think this is a part of the problem why T1 don't execute so well on ADCs that, of course, need to be set up for success, because currently the version of T1 play through Oner and play through, of course, the side lanes in order to find success in the game, while Gumayusi makes sure to play on a very alone, and he, of course, gets farm, and this is how he approaches things. But in this moment, you can see a part of the problem where Gumayusi here, a wave is coming and they're calling to fight on side lane. In a lot of cases, I would just say Gumayusi needs to just stay mid here and push because he's not going to participate in the fight that happens to bot. But here you can see T1 desperately scramble to have an advantage here on bottom side, but they commit into the Renekton, and then, of course, Gumayusi is out of position, and plain and simple what aiming does is just keep pushing down mid and breaking the tower. This is not to blame Gumayusi or blame T1 or anyone in particular, it's just T1's playstyle. Gumayusi adjusting to this in real time, of course, is a very bad move. But I thought I'd highlight this to kind of hammer home the point why T1 don't get a lot of success on the hyper carries. They never really play through the ADC, besides potentially like looking for level 3 ganks as they did throughout the series, which I will of course highlight in the next games. The ending of the game happened during this fight. Obviously, T1 didn't manage to accomplish enough in terms of how much they side laned. I think DK here, not so sure why they are so afraid. I think they could commit so much harder looking at their items. 3 items there, 3 items there. DK just played a much better mid game, and T1 didn't have any individual, strong value out of their pocket picks. Because in all honesty, obviously, this type of a draft isn't the greatest on paper, but you expect the T1 deliver when, of course, individually, Bessa is one of the best champs for Doran. Same thing for, of course, Keria. But the form of T1, of course, doesn't allow them to bend the rules of the game, and DK was strong enough to, of course, hold back. And I think DK could have just engaged a little bit harder here. In some cases, it's good for DK that Beryl is a psychopath the way he is, because it did look like aiming and Showmaker were a little bit too timid in their approach. Because somehow, the Atakan was stolen, of course, by the Nocturne. Nothing left is of interest in this game. I do think that T1 just gave away a little bit too much on the weak side for Doran, and in the end, they didn't get any advantages with their globals, which means that they're weaker in the team fights. So now on to the legendary Jarvan game. So something that you're going to notice as a pattern for T1 is that they are just slamming ganks after ganks, and DK never ever adjusts any of their warding patterns to actually defend themselves against this. So Oner is going to do early ganks to, of course, enable T1's bot lane to get prio, And if they have prior, of course, Keria is going to be able to impact the map, and that's how they're going to control the early game and also the mid game. If Oner and Keria is enabled, they usually dominate the map. And this type of a level 3 gank angle is a big adjustment that Oner, of course, did coming into this series. This, of course, with the enemy having no sums, Janna being pushed so she can't harass, and of course the Alistar and the Sivir, is a massive win for, of course, the bot lane of T1. After a long contest in the river, we're going to notice this amazing team fight. So a lot of back and forth in this game. Eventually we're going to reach this point in the game where DK have Soulpoi and we're going to have a massive team fight. T1 is going to use Rumble revealing himself on the bot lane as a trigger to contest the river. And Keria is thinking to himself, any contact here, anyone that attacks him, especially after, of course, the Janna Q comes through, he wants to take any fight possible. He knows the Sign Collapse is going to go faster. Maybe Doran could have taken the aggressive path if they were looking for something like this because of the Rumble, having no prio. Here, Oner is looking to flag and Keria combos through, and we find a nice combo from, of course, Talia, and the flag that Oner preemptively put is going to be used to knock up Lucid. Beautiful ult here from, of course, Oner, the Boneless, where he gets onto the backline, he flashes out and EQs back in, hits for, of course, the Sundered Sky, hits again for the Sundered Sky, kites backwards with a W. After his EQ landed, we see the beautiful CC chain that Doran started, or continued rather, and Oner kiting back another Sundered Sky proc, Doran providing fire, and then Oner queuing back to the same flag that he placed before. This is one of the craziest Jarvan teamfights I've ever seen, and I have seen a shit ton of them, I tell you. I am ancient, I am old, and I've seen a lot of Jarvan games. Let's just rewind that real quick, just to really hammer home the point. Boom. Back to YamatoCannon conversations. T1, don't pull it out. If you pull it out in this direction where Sion is standing, you can all turn on the target that is Lucid currently and you can commit to a fight as the enemy crosses the choke point. Or if you pull it out here, you can attack the enemy as they cross this choke point and you can keep Sion here harassing the enemy on their entry. But T1 instead are in this awkward spot where the enemy has full information and Faker needs to hourglass a simple charm that has been fired from complete safety. T1 create a situation where they are at a positional advantage because they are trying to cross into space. When in reality, imagine they pull this YamatoCannon down and the enemy needs to cross that same area. Choke points work two-way. And here they try to combo the W onto, of course, aiming. There's no rocks to be placed by Faker. It's getting sliced and diced by the YamatoCannon. Lucid jumps onto Gumayusi and the engage didn't kill aiming, who has a Black Lever and a Ninja Tabi and a Janna to protect him, so it needs to be clean. T1 with a massive throw.
그래서 3비 들어갔습니다. 역공! 근데 바로 끊어버립니다. 그냥 에어본 지옥에 갇혔죠. 그리고 1빙도 끝났고
잡아내긴 했는데
패를까지 끝장납니다. 나만 루시드 창조 쿼드라킬 이렇게 깜깜합니다.
근데 이번
In Game 3, I wanted to highlight, of course, more of the same. Oner just going sicko mode, looking for the level 3 gank. I think this was an easy kill if Gumayusi kind of saved his Q and he had QE ready for the moment that, of course, Oner arrives. They could have also set up Polymorph. I think this was an easy kill. I want to highlight more the fact that, of course, Pantheon here looked for the level 3 gank again to disrupt, and he chunked aiming and ruin, of course, the lane of Nico and aiming once again. DK didn't learn their lesson, didn't put any vision, didn't put any early vision, because if they can spot Pantheon, then the tempo that he loses, especially doing bot side camps and then needing to cross into top side, is of course something that gets punished. But Oner, his world tour is not over just yet. He crosses through mid, and then he goes on to Showmaker, chunks him too as he gets his passive and another Q, and Faker is then of course getting a lot of breathing room. After Oner, of course, cleared the topside camps, and there's a pink ward placed by Faker. Very good comms here, of course. They know the ward, and there's only one ward for Showmaker. Faker's calling. This guy needs to crash this wave. We can punish him here. Oner comes back after clearing his topside camps. This is his third gank of the game already. And Oner has been so damn busy leveraging the Pantheon to, of course, set his teammates up for success. Here, Beryl does a cheeky move. He's kind of a good actor. He turns into Wukong and is looking to gank Faker. And I don't think that Faker expected this at all, for the support to come from topside. Obviously here he could notice that this Wukong is level 4 and this Wukong is level 5, because he turned into Wukong by the time, of course, this Wukong was level 5, I mean level 4, so he didn't switch at the time where he leveled up, so he couldn't, like, he's not having the right amount of stats. But still, with the way he controls his clone, he's not letting the clone escape into any direction, makes it seem that this is a Wukong W that he's swinging by with. And here he begins to bonk him, and then the root comes through, and I think that Faker just wasn't ready for this. I think Faker just got, you know, mind gamed by Beryl the Wizard. This game in particular, Siwu died to a gank earlier, and as D+ is looking to collapse onto top side because they have bad numbers into bot, their tempo is quite bad to defend the bot wave, they're just setting up for this dive. But obviously this dive is so crazy to do, and also highlights one of the biggest strengths of course, Pantheon, where if you're ever in this situation, you shouldn't look to dive like this. Victor is basing bot, TPing bot, and you have your 4-man topside here, and Pantheon is just going to ult and begin to collect. Doran finally dies because aiming has to ult deep, but as you can see, DK is going to be punished extensively for this, and T1 is going to be so damn fed that there's no return in this game, of course. And if you thought that once was enough, it kind of continues. The value of Cannon in the 2v2, because he's level 10 against Aiming's level 8, is of course amazing. And then also a classic moment of Aiming losing against Shopkeeper, going for static shiv in such a game. This is of course something that we hate, especially because the state of Kraken Slayer is just so damn OP, so you should never look to do this. I don't think there's ever a justification. I need wave clear. No. You need damage. Lots of it. And Kraken offers you exactly that. So this game exploded after that beautiful early game from Oner, and then the counter dive initiative against, of course, D+ as they tried to kill Doran. For those who are outside of the loop, Molten Rammus, basically how you lane with this is if you are on blue side, you can gank the lane level 1. You basically want to put yourself in a situation where you have W level 1, and then you walk up to the enemy support or AD, press W and start basic attacking. You take very little minion damage, you take very little auto damage back, and you hard win trades like that. Level 1, Rammus is very strong, and then you leverage that to level 2 with your taunt, and then you abuse the fact that the enemy might not understand your champion fully. You rush Thornmail, you rush Bramble Vest, and then you leverage the fact that you have a good roam and good engageability with the R. It isn't completely crazy, is what I'm trying to tell you. With, of course, the E-taunt being quite long, you can be very disruptive to many different champions. I don't think it's completely troll. How Beryl played, on the other hand, is of course completely troll, and if you fall behind with a champion like Rammus, you're going to look disgustingly useless, because you, of course, are very reliant on snowballing, because you are only as useful as you are tanky, and you're generating 0 gold, and if you are in a position where your team falls behind, you're of course going to be a paper, a little paper turtle that, or armadillo, whatever the hell Rammus is, and you're not going to contribute nothing. You can see here Beryl just walking up, beginning to basic attack. I think he doesn't even know how to play Rammus, I'm going to be honest. There's a good video of Rammus support that LOL Dobby uploaded, and I recommend taking a look at that, because Beryl just doesn't even know how to play Rammus, if I'm going to be honest. He doesn't know how to play Rammus at all. I know it might seem troll that he picked Rammus, which in some degree it is, but my man doesn't know how to play Rammus, straight up. He doesn't know how to play Rammus at all, and it shows. It really, really shows. And speaking of Oner, surprise, 3 games in a row, DK still don't ward for level 3 ganks. 3 games in a row, Oner gets value. Flash gone, and he crosses into top side. Luce is not even in position to punish, and Silas is going to look to re. Later on, we have the situation where T1 have a freezing wave topside, which of course is very tricky to deal with. It's very hard to deal with. But they do this nice adjustment where this wave is crashed, and they just send MF into bot, and they fix it by sending Silas and Leona into topside. So MF is going to farm alone, and they're going to send men into topside to fix Doran's wave state. He W's out of the Rammus taunt, which of course is great. The value of this GP pick is immense in this game, and then they try to go again to find some value, but then they just chase on to Beryl, and eventually Oner is going to do this Superman punch, fly in the air, and this is where the inting begins. We're just going to have a spree of Rammus deaths, where plain and simple Doran just acting as bait to just make Beryl enter. The GP ult comes down, Beryl has no flash from that earlier gank. Rammus ult for Silas, and he bonks him and he kills him. And here we go again. Another one. Why not? Now at this point, Rammus' support is completely dog shit. Is this inventory? He's not tanky. The enemy has damage. Oner comes through with the Morgana ult, which is very powerful and partially the reason why he picked the Silas. And he's just going to dive deep here onto Beryl. They have a CC chain, Morgana ultimate, and there you go. Feat of Warfare completely claimed by farming armadillos on the Rift. Obviously, the majority of this game was just a plain stomp. This is just, honestly, the T1 solo laners went on a couple of occasions in the mid to late game, but Gumayusi was so damn fed and Silas was so damn strong. I wanted to highlight, Rammus has good target access with his ultimate. And here, for example, he gets contact with Gumayusi. Obviously, he lives because he has QSS, redemption, and so forth. But I just wanted to highlight this moment, at least, like Rammus has some games where he could be useful. This was a game where Beryl just completely ran it down, so obviously it's not the case. But I do think that Beryl, like this Rammus champion, is something that could be explored in certain contexts. But this, of course, ain't it. But look at that target access onto the MF. And then you have the CC chain, and then Gumayusi just QSS's, and then he just keeps life sealing, keeps hitting, and then his boys are just protecting him. And T1 qualify to at least the play-ins. We're going to do a breakdown on, of course, the Genji T1 series that's coming up. Super exciting weekend of LCK coming up. Let me know what you guys thought about this breakdown. Let me know if there's any games that you believe I've missed out on. I'll catch you guys on, of course, the next one. Congratulations to T1 for making it, and congratulations for also making it as dramatic as it was, because that game 2 was very losable. MVP Oner, 100%.